You'll simply use that as a LinkedIn. Come on. Simply switch using just. Show your talent there and it doesn't work, right? You're done. Your class is done. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I know who's Sushant?
It's me, Bhavani, Praveen. I'm logging off.
Oh, Bhavani, okay. Yeah, okay.
You can listen to that.
Son's name. But Bhavani, you're including your son already to success factors? Like how my son sits with me when I take an online class from my home. So
No, exactly. I don't want to put them into this kind of.
all right, guys. So yesterday we were talking about MDF objects. We discussed about rules, not just MDF objects. So we have seen different rules like initialize rules, save rules, validate rules. So the point is when to use these rules, where to use these rules. Something that's very important. Not just that you use these rules every day.
Hi, Praveen. Good morning. This is Kanchan. I sent you a message actually regarding the yesterday's session. Sorry about that. I had to come out from the mute and I just have not very clear on yesterday's session. So if it is possible, if other people also on the same page, if you could give us some details or step by step, little couple of examples, that would be really helpful. I'm not sure about others.
We'll be doing similar.
Even especially when we are doing the configuration part, could you please be slow because we could not able to follow the screens Praveen. Can you please be slow on that?
Sure, of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll try to recap what we did yesterday quickly.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to our configure object definitions place where we try to assign some rules to our object education. Right, so we have our object definition called education. So the custom education that we created yesterday, we've got certain fields and everything which we discussed the other day. But here we have got some rules, initialize rules, validate rules, save rules, and delete rules. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, Praveen.
Yeah, that's Praveen.
Yeah, Praveen.
Okay, because someone was not able to. Okay, so what is a save rule? What is a initialize rule? What is a validate rule? Delete rules, I never used it. Usually this is a rule that we set up for parent-child when you have a parent-child object. So when you delete one of them, how it should behave. So never used it, never saw the complete functionality, how it actually works, but we'll try and see something on that front as well. So initialize rules. Where do we use initialize rules? Initialize rules, the name itself says, at the beginning of the object, when you open the object, when you initialize the object, what happens? Based on the rule, the system defaults certain values. That's what initialize rules is all about. Right? So what we did yesterday is for our education object, I said legal entity is always equal to East Germany. That means when I create an object called education, by default, the legal entity field is mapped to East Germany. So that's what initializing is about. I'm initializing the object with a set of fields as default. Okay. Whereas your validate rules it validates when you save it. It says, okay, validate if this particular condition is satisfied or not. So what is the condition that we said here? I said validate if the legal entity is mapped to the employee's legal entity or not. If not, then throw an error message which says incorrect legal entity for employee when I assign a legal entity. This particular check should happen at a legal entity level. Okay, so this is a simple rule that we have written yesterday. So what we did was, when I initialize, it should by default assign the value. Whereas validate is when I save it, it should validate the value whether you want to check with something. I'm trying to check the legal entity with the employee's legal entity. If it does not match, I'm asking to throw an error. You can use any different scenario. So let's say, for example, validate rule can be placed where, let's say you have put some employee's location or group or whatever condition. You have certain conditions. The conditions are matching, so that's where you use validation rules. You validate with your conditions and say, if it's fine, save it. Otherwise, throw an error or information or something like that. That's what validation is about. So what we did is, we'll see from a user perspective before we actually change the rules. Save rule, you did not write it yesterday? Okay.
Don't use this tool for any other rule. Let's create one more. This could be different. Whatever the rule we just added. But this is going to be different.
Okay, let me create a new object in the first place. For those who don't find it comfortable, I'll create a new object. So I need to think about. Right, okay. So I won't change the previous thing, so that's fine. So we'll create a new object, but what object you want to say create?
The same way like education
I'll give you a handbook, not a handbook. I'll give you a assignment which explains step by step, to create an object, child object, assign a child object, within a child object, another object. It's already there. If they don't, if they did not give you, I can send you as well. Okay. So maybe I can send after the class today itself. Okay. So that's an assignment that you guys can do for the weekend. And also I can give you a custom object creation workbook, which does not have any help. It's just an assignment so that you can try. That's for tuition reimbursement. Okay. So that's one custom object assignment that I have, tuition reimbursement, which you guys can use. The other one is a step-by-step approach of how you do it. That's a guided exercise as well as one exercise without any guide. Okay, that can be used for your weekend, which is good. Okay, meanwhile, we'll try to create one. Let's try to see what we want to create. Which one?
the same way, like, can we create a job history, like employee can add his previous
Actually, we can create job history, but the point is these are all talent fields which are already available as standard background elements. So I just don't want to confuse people by putting all this custom object. So let's say expenses. So creating a new object called expenses. So this one is expense detail. So I'm not creating pick list. You know how to create pick lists and how to assign them. Ideally, you have to create pick lists from your pick list. You know how to create pick lists, right? Yeah. I'm not creating them because it takes time again. So yes, but any custom object that we create takes custom by default. So API and this one is complete history. Expense details.
So here we have an external code and an external name, right? These are fields.
Mm-hmm.
These are the fields. We cannot change the data type, naming convention as a label, right? The external code or external name.
That can be changed in the label here.
Okay, the label is going to impact the, does it reflect here?
No, it doesn't reflect here. These things will stay as is.
That's what it is. If you look at any
External code will remain same. You can remove external name if you want. That's fine. External code is a unique code that is referred by system. So that's why it's always. Okay, so we take expense details here. You can also have a workflow. Once you submit an expense, you want to trigger a workflow. We'll do that at the parent object level so that you can see that. Okay, so what I'll do here is, ideally these are all supposed to be pick lists. So let's say this one is expense type. And or maybe I should create, I want to do it perfectly. I'll just create a couple of pick lists so that I can use some rules or conditions with those values. Okay, so let's create a pick list for expense type. So this one is one, expense type is let's say travel. Two, it's expense type is travel. Oh, what else?
Accommodation.
Accommodation, lodging.
Accommodation. Then miscellaneous. Miscellaneous. What else? Okay. So just an example for us so that we can use these conditions for writing some rules. Okay. So next one is I guess expense type amount should be fine. We'll create a small basic one. So what we did here is this is expense type. So let's say this is a pick list. Expense type valid source. I know it's so you'll get those documents there, okay? When you go to the object, you see the fields. So when you get external name, what I can do is I can put it as a date. That's a problem? Why? I put the glasses to that one then. Sorry? Okay guys, we lost our projector here. So sorry?
Tuition reimbursement.
It's not really. It can be anywhere. Just an example for it. It's not specific to US. It's coming, it's coming. Why do you need these glasses within the classroom? Man?
Because it is side classes.
Sight glasses.
For wicket and punishment.
Come on, man. Okay, so that's fine, guys. So let's come back. So we got our screen back. So we have a expense type. External name is nothing but the date on which you got the expense, and then you got an amount, right? The amount for reimbursement. So it should be amount. Where is an amount? Decimal. This is an amount. So what I just created is a, see, this is what I'm trying to do now. This is what I'm trying to do now. So, so here, so we'll get expense type, date of expense, and amount, and you get 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. Obviously, for an employee, all these things are needed at an employee level, right? So I want to have an parent object which will have a user, obviously, because that needs to be mapped to employee data. So all those things should be done. So I just created this already, the child object, and I have 3 fields. If you look at it, decimal and date and a pick list. So just save it.
You mentioned
Amount. The data type, you mean? It's decimal, right? You'll get 112 point something like that. It's a decimal usually. So I'm going to the parent object now.
to-do category picked up automatically or you
Sorry?
to-do category.
Uh-huh.
So did you assign or it picked up automatically?
It will pick up automatically. I did not assign anything. So we'll go to the expense reimbursement now. Expense reimbursement. This is not from parent, right? This should be basic. So active MD version, complete history. This is the expense reimbursement object where I'll have a user. This one should always be user, right? If at all I have to make this available at a user level, remember there should always be a user. User. And this one is employee name and position. Position is a generic object. What is the valid value source for position? So we need to take it from here. So this position. So I should put it in my valid value sources. Okay, I save it.
Expense and reimbursement should be cloud.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that should not be. So this is fine now. But we need to assign our child object, which we'll do now. So this is expense details. Is it one-to-one? One-to-many? And this is expense details. It's a composite or a valid one? Composite. Good. Save it. You changed it? Okay, so we just created an object called expense or reimbursement. We'll go and assign this in manage data. So what is this expense reimbursement? Right, so if I select it, so there is a problem with this. You know what is the problem? Number I just gave, so it's coming as I gave. So let me show you. I'll show you the error. See this one? Yes, of course, I can have accommodation in 2 days, right? Don't you see an error? Don't you see a problem here? The projector gone. So what is this one? What is the problem with this one? Because of the heat. Sorry, we lost our projector here in the class, so meanwhile maybe, okay, there are too many, so. So the problem is, since you have seen it already, remember when you put something like this to external code within an object, external code is always unique. So I mapped it to our pick list. So I cannot choose the same value again. Once I choose it for an employee, I cannot choose it again. So you should not map it to a pick list. Ideally, you can, that's why yesterday, remember, I put serial number. Even already don't do sorry. Second time. One second time, yeah. Payment Anyway, so this is what we're talking about. So if you look at this expense type here, I did map it to external code. I was just saying external code is always unique within the system, right? So for an employee record here, within a parent object, the child object expense details, external code should always be unique. It's always better to have an order number instead of having a expense type as external code. So what I'll do is I'll just go here, or maybe here directly. We don't have an object. Configure object definitions. We go and change the object. called custom expense details. So what I'll do is take the spec list, I remove it, I put it a string, and I change it to order type. Sorry, order number. Okay? Because usually order number is unique per record. So I'll have this, and you have a date, and then what I have is I have to change it now. Phew. So this one is expense type. There's a backlist. This is this. Expense type. Sorry?
Details.
Uh-huh.
The details play an important role.
Of course, yes. A lot of things in the detail section, right? Just moving this on top of it. So expense type, and also here I forgot to put the name, so this is the date of expense. So now we should be fine. Now we should be fine. We'll go back to manage data. So I go to expense, reimbursement. Let's say this is Peter Chopra. This is Peter Chopra. So this is, that's it from today. Position. So there's a problem. I'll show you what the problem is. Peter Chopra, if I put and position, is he this one? No, he might not be. That's why I've taken it to show you the scenarios, man.
No, we can't make a default, Praveen. If the moment I choose employee name, the position should come automatically.
That's what we're going to do, right? So that's where the rules will come. So I've taken these fields exactly to show you those scenarios. So that's what we are going to do now. I'm saying these are the problems. So I want to have a rule which will say, have these values coming from the employee, the user directly. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll take this. Let's say travel on yesterday. I spent 1,000. And let's say I put this. Food. I put, let's say, 1,500. So then it should throw an error saying, okay, you spent 1,000 on travel and 1,500 on food. USD? No. Let's say you are only eligible for 200 rupees for food. I want to put some conditions like this. So now what we'll do is we'll write some rules to satisfy these conditions. In the first place, what I'll do is I'll set a condition which will say that the amount is limited to a maximum of 200 for food, let's say. Okay, so we'll save it. It's currently allowing, which it should not. So let me delete it. Now what I'll do is I'll write a rule which will put the default value for food, or let's say it should not be beyond 200. So business rules, configure business rules. So we'll go and create a new rule. So where do you write this? The condition on food. So is it expense, details or reimbursement? It should be details, remember. It's a child object. So rules are written at each object level. If you have child object, you have to write it at the child object level. So now, is this always true? Yes, it's always true. Or maybe I'll say if where is the expense type? Come on guys, this is not good. What should we do? Change the projector. So maybe you can sit here, this side. We'll continue. So please get your chairs this side. So since we are only few, maybe you can stand if you would like to, or if you guys would like to sit, I'm fine. So okay, so what we're doing here, is if the expense type is equal to food, then set amount is equal to, we should take a maximum value, right? Or I should take the minimum of amount entered and decimal 200. What am I saying here? Is take whichever is minimum, either 200 or the entered amount, which is right. Okay, so I save it. So what we are doing here is we're writing a rule at the object expense details level, which says if food is selected, so it should take minimum of amount of food. So where should this rule be written? Ideally.
That should be
Field level or object level. So where do you want to write it? We can write it anywhere, depends on when it runs it. As soon as I enter.
Validation.
Okay, in validation. See, validations is usually you should throw an error or do something, ideally. We can also do that. We'll try and do it, okay? So I'll go to object definition. I'll go to expense details. Remember, I'm doing it at a child object level now because it's a child object. So what I have to do is either I can put it here in the save rules, or I can also select the amount. So let's say I select first at a field level to show you how different things work. Okay, I selected this, save it. So that's saved. So manage data. So go to your expense reimbursement. So put something. Okay, so you select something. So it's food, this, Let's say I put 1000. It's bringing it back to 200. Okay, let's say I put 100. It remains 100. If I put 201, it brings it back to 200. The rule is working on the field. Okay, so the field that we have is foot, which is the condition, checks for condition. Let's say if I select accommodation and select 1000, doesn't do anything. Only when I select foot, this rule would be applicable because of the condition that we put there. The C is at a field level. What if I change it? Can this error out if exceeds 200? Yes, we can do it. As I said, that depends on the conditions that we set. Currently, I'm trying to set a rule which will bring the value to the 200 because usually we don't throw an error. Even if you put some reimbursement, it will only give you the maximum value that you are eligible for. Or like for example, you have a HRA. Let's say you have 1000 rupees eligible, put 5000, but you are still only paid for 1000 because you're only eligible for 1000. So that's a scenario that I've taken. If you want to do an error out scenario, we can do that as well. Like for example, we can take a rule which will validate and throw an error. If the employee name does not match the position that, let's say, I'll show you. Okay, so we have seen one thing here. Let's say the next thing is I'm going to write a rule which will
Whatever the amount that the user gives there, it should say that no, the maximum
okay, we can do that as well. We can do that. Okay, since a couple of guys wanted to see that, I'll do that.
Praveen?
Yes.
Praveen, one quick question. When we have rules like this, is that rules applicable when you are loading data through Excel also?
That I think it will error out or usually not, I guess, Suresh.
Okay.
Usually not, I guess. Maybe I think it's gone. Third time now. Okay, so coming back, so since people wanted to see this error, what I'll do is I'll just delete it. Okay, I'll put and condition. I'll add an and condition here. So this expense type is food and the amount entered is, let's say, greater than 200. Then write a message which will say, so we need to put some message. Okay, so I'll say people wanted to see the original, guys, always. So I have to create. I don't have an option, so I have to create. So message definition, I'll just create one. In your eligible only for 200 USD or 200. I'll just put it that way. Save it. Okay, so now I should see that. Write the message. So this one, so severity, if I put warning, I'll get a warning in yellow. It will allow me to save. If I put an error, it gives me error and it doesn't allow me to save anymore. Where should this associate to? It should be associated to amount. I save it. Okay, so now I'll just go create an expense reimbursement again. Mm-hmm. So expense type is FUD. And so let's say 250. So you're eligible only for 200. Okay, so it won't allow you to save or do anything. It will only take if you put anything less than 200.
You're not reaching to that field. Before reaching the field, you're getting it.
No, it will only take it only if you reach the field. It will take only till 200. 201. Sorry, maybe even 200.01. It will throw an error. Okay.
Praveen, Manoj,
Don't reach.
I said it record. Does it say?
Maybe that's.
Maybe field level.
Sorry, someone was asking a question.
Praveen, Manoj, I think you may show us the other way of doing it, but anyhow, I'm asking you early. See, for example, I want to do it based on the grade. For example, only for manager level, certain amount is eligible and CO level amount is eligible for the food.
That becomes even more complex. So if, for example, if you have different eligibilities for different managers, then you need to create a table in your object and then create it. So what you have to do is you have to create a table which will have, and it's again an MDF object, which will have a grade and your amounts. So it has to go, take your grade, map it with employee grade, and check if the amount matches or not. So, right. So for that, what we have to do is, I'll tell you the function. For example, I'll tell you the function. Or maybe it should check, right? So amount.
Praveen, here are two questions. One is based on the grade and the field. For example, CEO is only eligible for mobile and car allowances. Below them, they're not eligible. Even if they have an option to manager can choose a car allowance or mobile allowance, they should not see that particular two allowances at all in the LOV. Or if they can see the allowances, it should show that you are not eligible for this particular allowance. Either that these two things can be done. So how are we going to do this?
So if a manager is eligible only to see
only for whatever that you have created, yes, whatever that you have created, these three things only. And for CEO, apart from three, he can able to see another two, like mobile allowance and car allowance. So whenever he's going for so he's eligible for take a car and then he can travel. And also whatever the mobile he has spent, he can able to get reimbursed, but not for the managers.
One way of doing it is throwing an error if they select the ones that are not supposed to. The second one is based on your, so this becomes a parent-child, you see. The pick list that you're talking about should be different for different people. So that's a bit tricky to do. So instead you can throw an error saying, okay, you're not eligible to see that. That's an easier way of doing it. Otherwise it becomes
Can we do something in initialization to pop up something for a certain position and not for others?
And, I mean, initialization, yes, but what I'm thinking is from this point of view, like let's say manager has to see only 2 and others has to see 4, it becomes a parent-child relationship where because these are positions, right? So you're trying to map your pick list with a position, which is not possible.
The grade also we can define, right?
Yeah,
because
whatever.
only these allowances come from the grade, not on the positions.
Right. Even then, it's a grade. So what we can do is we can throw an error to make it simple. Otherwise, you have to create a pick list which will map with your employee pick list. Employee grade. And then for this grade, the parent, so the grade would become the parent pick list. And then you have child pick list, which will have only 2 or 3 expense types based on your grade. So this becomes quite complex to set up. But it should be fine, I guess. I think you should be able to try that. But the only problem is it's easier to not allow them to make changes because you can actually provide authorizations as well. You remember there is when we create these objects, we can define authorizations and role-based permissions. So before we do that, what we can do is I can show you how I wanted to discuss this point, but anyway, you brought it up. The other option that I see is what is that? Expense, right?
Hide option at the authorizations level?
No. So when you go here, when you go to your object, you can actually say this one is secured, and you can put it in MDF foundation object and save it. Okay. So that means you're now allowing eligibility for maintaining this fields. So wherein I'll go to roles and what maybe I can do is so in MDF foundation objects, I think I've chosen here, right? Where did I choose that? Miscellaneous or? Where did I put that? Sorry.
MDF.
Okay, it's here, right? Sorry. So I can select a field level override, where in expense type I can say read access only or no access. Okay, I can give create, edit. So then I need to see how we can give these values. So we can. So we can do it at a field level. So I'm thinking the other option is to do it at a field level. But again, it's a pickless, so we need to see this. Because for me, the easiest solution, as far as I see it, is to throw an error when they select it, not allow them to save. Based on the grade, map the pickless values that they can choose. If they choose something that they're not supposed to, throw an error. So that's the easy way of doing it, Manoj. Because otherwise, because your pay grade is not a pickless, so we cannot make it parent.
Yeah, not only pay grade, see, based on the location also, because I'm working in India, I may go to US, because my food allowance is different. When I go to Middle East, my food allowance is different. When I go to Mexico, that's different. Based on the location also, the food allowance is
But the point, see, hold on. The point is we don't save our route. No, hold on. The travel expense is a different software, okay? We're not trying to make a travel and expense software here. I'm just showing an example of different things that are possible. Take it this way. Don't bring the travel and expense solution to SUCCESSFACTORS, because if I do it, I make a solution by myself. Because travel and expense, we use different software.
Then the whole process itself should move to travel, because when the moment you save expense.
See, when I say this is just an example, okay, take it as an example. We're trying to do some solution. Don't take literal travel expense management software and ask me to build it in SUCCESSFACTORS. Might not be possible.
No, if
right,
client asks, so
yeah, they have to go for a travel and expense software, right? We can't build it in SUCCESSFACTORS. SUCCESSFACTORS is HR. Travel and expense, they should go to Concur. So if you have such a huge complex scenario, then it's not possible. We're trying to build something I'm just showing you some scenario where we can try to bring all the scenarios that you're talking about. So you might not use all the scenarios in one place, right? You never use it. I'm trying to bring something which I feel could be possible to use or show you the solutions that are possible. Okay, so just to show you how things work. Okay, so this is for your where are we on this one? So we created a rule at a field level. What up? Okay. So when we go back, let's say I don't want to put it at a field level because it's almost doing it at an instant level, right? Instantly. So I can also select different types of rules that are available at object levels. So the object level rules that we have are save rules or validate rules, something like that. For example, we've got a save rule which will trigger the rule when we save it. Okay, so for example, I've got the rule that I put it on the amount, which I'm going to delete now. So what I'll do is I'll put a save rule which will expense FUD. Okay, so I'll just save it. So what happens now is your rules are triggered at a different point. For example, I can simply go to manage data. Let's say expense reimbursement. I understood. I gave a permission. It's gone. Oh. Sorry. I made a mistake. Sorry, that was my mistake. Sorry. Okay. So that was a mistake from my side. So sorry, guys. So we go to expense reimbursement. Now you see it. Let's send. So we'll just take expense type is FUD and we'll just put some date and let's say I put 1,000. It won't do anything. I put 10,000 anyway, so let's say I select accommodation and that's put. Okay. Now I save it. Now it throws an error. Because if you look at previous case, the minute I put amount in that particular field, it was throwing an error because the validation was running at that particular field level. Now we change it to save rules at an object level, and when we save the object, it triggers this rule and runs the rule. So you need to identify where you need to put it based on the conditions that you come across. Okay, so usually most of the rules that I come across, we use it at a field level because these are used for validations or propagations or something like that. But when you come across situations where you might have to write a rule like yesterday we did for validation, something is not matching, then you have to do it. Or let's say you need to trigger another object based on a validation. So those are certain things that you come across. So now it is not allowing me to save, and then I have to change it to 200, which doesn't look so good, right? Previously it's better because I was doing it at an object level. So this is fine, it's saved now. Right, so I just created the data. Whereas validation rules, what are validation rules? So let's say I just remove it here. I'll go and create a new rule. for validation. And could be yes. This is most of eligibility conditions we put under validate rules condition. You're right. So that's what I'm about to do actually. So let me do expense validation, and this is expense validation. This expense details, or maybe expense. Okay. So what we can do is I'm trying to do something, okay? Let me see if that's possible. So let's take, let me take this expense details, right? So what I'll do is I'll put it under manage parameters. So you've got expense details. You've got expense reimbursement. And you got your, I'll add a new parameter which says so I need to select the object. Okay, so I'm putting in a manage parameter. That means I'm taking two objects together. So let's say, for example, what I can do is, if you look at this here, you can see the child object available. Okay, if expense type is equal to, let's say, to value, let's say FUD and parent and condition, where I can choose the other object. So the employee user, where was the user, right? So here, if the employee's job information, if I go and say that he has a pay grade, as a pay grade is equal to whatever you take, let's say. So if he's equal to, let's say this, which one we should take? So anyone who knows an employee with a particular, take something, okay? So this is a pay grade. Okay, I can simply take the expense type is equal to this. So the condition now says, if an employee has a pay grade of this, like the previous scenario we're discussing, and if you're choosing a particular type of expense, then you can throw an error. I can throw an error. I'm just taking something, okay? IBM data mismatch grouping not allowed. Just taking something, okay? You can take this one. Okay, I save it. So condition where I'm saying if you are not allowed to do this. Okay. So I'm taking a validation now, expense validation. So I have a validate rule now, which will validate an employee based on the pay grade and the type of expense he's choosing. So take MPG 24. Let's quickly go to an employee. Peter, So we'll go to Guy Penny. So we'll go to employment information. Sorry? But then we did not do it. We'll do it. I mean, it's the same, so that's why I did not do. So I go to the pay grade. So what is that? Take MPG 24. Maybe it was mapped to. So this is a problem with incorrect data, obviously. So okay, guys. So I think Kanchan has a meeting, and also for folks in US, it's already a bit late. So we can continue with this one Monday. Okay. So that should be fine. So that should be fine. We can actually continue with this one tomorrow. You guys have a good day and enjoy our weekend, guys. Thank you. We'll continue on the same concept in the next class. Bye, Praveen. Bye-bye, guys.